It's interesting that a occupation that's considered to be jaded, and well, people like Harvey Weinstein, I wonder why, but your ability to be a really good actor is in direct proportion to your ability to experience childlike wonder. You know, I happened to tune in last night. I'd never seen Sully. It was just so wonderful because, again, Tom Hanks was asked, what's the most difficult thing about being an actor? And he said the most difficult thing about being an actor is that knowing in 3 months you're going to have to be in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on a piece of wood crying because a volleyball is floating away. That's knowing that moment is coming. You know, that it comes. That moment, finally that moment is here. And how do you actually, how do you do it? How do you get yourself in your optimal state of creativity so you can actually absolutely suspend disbelief and be heartbroken because your volleyball is floating away. Wilson, Wilson, you know. And he said that's the hardest thing about being an actor. And Tom is so wonderful. His wife Rita was a student with me at the Conrad studio. But in Sully, there's a moment, you know, a tremendous moment where he's sitting, is after the plane has been, people have been rescued, but he didn't know what the actual toll was of what had happened after he landed in the Hudson. And somebody comes in and says, we have 155. And he says, and I think Tom answers, he goes, so he got all 155. And he's talking about the people on the plane. That was his total concern after landing the plane and saving all his, he could not let go until he found out that everybody on that plane was saved. And he had so much emotion when he said 155. I thought, fuck, there it is again. God damn it, you got me, you know. You fucking got me. And that's what I love about acting. You know, you get to have that shared visceral experience. The only way I could have that is if Tom Hanks took me there. He had to feel so much himself that he compelled me to feel it with him. He brought me to tears, man. Doesn't take much, you know, because when you train in this fashion, you become more and more vulnerable all the time. And you know, innocent people are vulnerable, you know, because they're guileless. You know, there's no guile involved, you know. And so anyhow, there's a lot of quotes from some people in there that I just want to share with you. I was writing them like mad on the newspaper last night as I was watching it, because Spielberg is arguably the finest director of my lifetime, you know, and his body of work is just second to none. Scorsese talks about Steven is a very mystical being, in that he sees things that are in a way that are mystical, you know, and that's not explained by logic, you know. And then he says he said he looks at the world through the eyes of innocence. You know, this is something that we can learn from, you know, because in order to, if you really can become, when you become really vulnerable and have that wonder, that beautiful poetic wonder of what's this existence that we have, this heart that we have, then what happens is you can experience imaginary things as if they're absolutely happening. You know, it's a return to childlike wonder, and another word for that is innocence. So I was opening the big damn book this morning. You know, everything you need to know is in this book, Pauline. You just have to put the words in the right order, and that's the thing I'm working on, you know. So I opened it up, and I did that synchronicity thing where I said, what's the first word that I see? And sure enough, the first word I saw opened up right at the top of the page, enthuse, E-N-T-H-U-S-E. But I'm not perfect, because again, the only thing you have to study here is enthusiasm and an open mind, you know. Enthusiasm comes from the Greek enthusiasmo. It means to dance crazily with God inside, you know, so that's enthusiasm. So then I went on to look up innocence. Free from guilt, malice, or guile. Free from guile. Simple. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Simple, simple. It's a gift to be simple, it's a gift to be free, you know. And then when you, by definition, when you are doing all that traditional horse shit with acting, breaking it down, finding the beat, you're kind of trying to outsmart them. You know, guile, you're using your guile. I want to make the smartest choices. I want highness. If I do it like this, I do it like that, maybe this will happen. If I do it like that, you know, maybe I'll do the opposite here. Maybe I'll stress this. All of that stuff, that's not innocence. That's not childlike wonder. You know, when you're a kid, your imagination takes over the minute the game starts. And that's one of the most beautiful things about this way of working, is it returns us back to that wonderful childlike wonder. You know, there's not enough of that in the world. Everybody's kind of a walking dead man these days. So it goes on to say, and they talk to Ben a lot, Ben Kingsley, Sir Ben. So he likes to be called, and because Kingsley did, of course, Schindler's List with Stephen. And what he said is lovely. He says, Kingsley says, Spielberg is one of the directors who values stillness. You know, and this is powerful again, because Ben Kingsley said, out of your stillness grows beauty. So when you're working, you can't be doing a lot of stuff, but you have to be still, and you have to have a high state of vibration, be still like a hummingbird. So it's powerful. Again, the affirmations I'm thinking is I'm always on the lookout to make sure what we've got here is the cleanest, most concentrated information we can get about how to get a fucking job, how to outshine people, how to win, you know, how to take the, you know, how to send them home, and we keep going. So, and he says this is what inspired him in that film was how the language of cinema awakes an emotional response. That's your visceral experience again. So you gotta just learn how can I feel the most detailed mixed emotion as I possibly can at this table, so people watching will feel it too. And again, none of that happens up here. It all happens here. So it says, it goes on to say, Steven says, I direct by instinct, he says. He says, I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth by thinking about it, which is lovely, you know. Because he feels like if he starts thinking about his instinctive movement, his instinctive feeling of what needs to go on, then it will diminish it. That's why he talks about looking a gift horse in the mouth. And Liam Neeson talks about in this, I see this documentary, it's wonderful. Liam Neeson talks about, there's a scene where Liam Neeson, as Schindler walks into a restaurant in Germany, and there's some Nazis sitting at a table adjacent to him. And he sits down, and and Steven said, I want you to go sit down and light a cigarette. So so Liam Neeson sat down and put a cigarette in, lit it, took a puff, and blew the smoke out. And Steven came over and he goes, listen, Liam, what I want you to do is I want you to take the cigarette out, put it in your mouth, and just inhale it for a long time, and then just kind of blow the smoke out your fingers, and then slowly put it down. And Liam got his nose out of joint. He goes, fuck. Spielberg walked away, and he went over to Ben Kingsley. He said, what the fuck? This guy's telling me how to fucking breathe, you know? I feel like he's saying he's interfering with my process, you know? And Ben Kingsley said to Neeson, every conductor needs a great soloist. He said, if you've got a great conductor, just be the great soloist. And then they showed the clip, and it's so powerful when that smoke comes up. And then you see the Nazis through the smoke. I mean, it's a cinematic, but that's how powerful this guy's vision is, you know. And so even though we work in choices awareness, we're the best at taking direction, but we don't have any preconceived idea of what we think we should do. So it's very easy for us to feel the director, what the director needs, and we can give him exactly what that is, you know. So I just thought it was funny that here's Ben Kingsley talking to Liam Neeson down a little bit about, you know, he's not telling you how to breathe, just, you know, he's got a vision, see what happens. And so, and Liam Neeson said, from that point forward, I just put myself in very capable hands, you know. So, and having had that opportunity to work with him, and he actually, you know, he's very accessible. He took the time to say to me, he said, no, actually he didn't say this to me, he said this to somebody else, but he said every time an actor says a line of dialogue, they lose some of their innocence. That's why he wants to get the first take. And again, during that time, I was lucky enough to work with Brian De Palma on Black Dahlia and Ridley Scott with Matchstick Men, and I didn't rehearse one time with any of them. They all wanted to shoot that first take. So if you think rehearsal helps you and you need rehearsal, then you can put yourself at a real disadvantage at that moment. Embrace the fact that rehearsal comes from the Old English, meaning to plow the same field over and over again. Maybe it's not necessary. Maybe we moved into something that's even more powerful now, and it's this power of not knowing, this incredible gift, you know. So at one point, we're in the playback room, and there were 3 people in this room, and the door was closed. And it was me, Harvey Weinstein. No, I'm kidding. It was me, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Steven fucking Spielberg. I think that's his middle name. I'm not sure. It should be, because he's amazing. But I'm enough of a, you know, I think maybe it's grounded enough, or just a bumpkin enough to have that moment where I thought, well, this is all right. You know, I'm in a room right now with arguably the #1 director in the world, the #1 leading man in the world, and the other person in that room is Mom Eastin's little boy Stevie. And here we are. And so I was reflecting on that. Spielberg said, okay, that's Steven Spielberg. He said, name dropping, it's so much fun. But he said, okay, let's do it again. And then at the end of the day, he came by my trailer, was walking by, and I was coming out, and he looked up and he said, Steve, I want you to know you saved us 4 hours today. And if I'm lying, I'm dying. And that's the beauty of this way of working. God, it makes you so, whatever the opposite of needy is, what is the opposite of needy? Brave? I don't know, fuck, who knows? It's a semantic thing. But you can learn that, you know. Isn't that fun? You can learn how to bring a greater presence into your work. It's kind of an infinite thing, because you never reach the end of that journey, but it can just get better and better and better. And it's my feeling that if you really work at it, if it becomes your reason for being, as the Hindus say, your dharma, your work is your worship or whatever, what happens is you start also to express more wonder in your walking around life, you know. You see more reds in the reds, more blues in the blues, you know. You see beauty everywhere, you know, poetry. And, you know, let me just share a couple of things with you about this before we get started. It's matter of fact, some of you may have heard this once or twice. But the very first line of this essay is so powerful. It says, Ralph Waldo Emerson is one of the preeminent philosophers in American letters, Paulina. He lived in Massachusetts at the same time with Henry David Thoreau, and the two of them were they're still considered to be the finest philosophers in American letters. So it says, self-reliance. I read the other day some verses written by an eminent painter, which were original and not conventional. There it is, original and not conventional. If you work in this fashion, your work will be original and not conventional. Okay? It says, the soul always hears an admonition in such lines, but let the subject be what it may. The sentiment they instill is of more value than any thought they may contain. The power which resides in us is new in nature, and none but we know what we can do, nor do we know until we have tried. We but half express ourselves, and are ashamed of that divine idea which each of us represents. It may be trusted and safely imparted, but God will not have his work made manifest by cowards. You gotta be a warrior. You can't, it's not something for the weak of heart. Then he talks about how babies, because they're innocent, again, this thing about innocence, it says, what pretty oracles nature yields to us on the text and face and behavior of children, babes, and even brutes, that divided and rebel mind, that distrust of sentiment, because our arithmetic has not computed the strength and means opposed to our purpose, these have not. These don't distrust sentiment. So you're getting back to innocence again, And it says, and when we look in their faces, we are disconcerted. Infancy conforms to nobody. All conform to it. So the one baby commonly makes 4 or 5 out of the adults who prattle and play to it. You must, let's see. The man is clapped into jail by his consciousness. Self-reliance, it says here, the virtue in most requests is conformity. Self-reliance is its aversion. It loves not realities and creators, but names and customs. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. So wonderful. We really spend a lot of time talking about what we call the idiot grin. It's a smile that we get on when we're working because we want to be liked. We figure if we're pleasant, they'll like us. It's not really connected to anything. It kind of looks like a doofus a little bit, and it's really powerful information, because the thing that makes them want to hire you is if you don't care if you get hired or not. You know who you are. You're not going to take it as a great tragedy if you don't get hired, and if you do get hired, it's because they have great taste, and you know that. It's not ego, it's just tremendous confidence in your ability, But Emerson talks about this idiot grin. It's so fascinating because, again, this is from almost 300 years ago, 200 and some years. It says, there is a mortifying experience in particular which does not fail to wreak itself in the general history. I mean the foolish face of praise, the forced smile we put on, in company where we do not feel at ease, in answer to conversation which does not interest us. These muscles, not spontaneously moved, but moved by low usurping willfulness, grow tight about the outline of the face. Anybody who's the least bit perceptive can tell a fake smile from a real smile, but they've recently found out what the difference actually is. It's that there's these little muscles around your eyes called the cilli, I believe, S-C-I-L-L-I. And when you have a real smile, these are activated. But when you got the idiot grin, they're not. So that's why it looks so fucking stupid. So plus when you have that space between the smile and the frown, you're this thing where it's called being inscrutable. They're not sure what's going on with you. They can sense something is, but they're not sure, so they can start to look in a little closer to see. And the minute that happens in the audition room, you can know you're in pretty good shape because you're being magnetic, because that kind of energy is very magnetic. If there's one passage that I feel sums up what Charles did since 1961, what I've done since 1992, it's this quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, Self-Reliance. He talks about, where does magnetism come from? What is magnetism? What causes things to be drawn to you? And it says, the magnetism which all original action exerts is explained when we inquire the reason of self-trust. Who is the trustee? What is the aboriginal self, capital S, on which a universal reliance may be grounded? So what is an aboriginal self? Again, aboriginal self is before thought began. When we were one with nature, just like Tessa, Tessa never barks and goes, oh, I'm sorry, was that too loud? She just barks, So what is the nature and power of that science-baffling star, which shoots a ray of beauty even into trivial and impure actions if the least mark of independence appears? That inquiry leads us to the source, at once the essence of genius, of virtue, and of life, which we call, and if I had a drum, could I get a drum roll, please? Which we call spontaneity or instinct. Capital S, capital I, just like they're fucking sacraments, So again, sponte comes from the Latin meaning free will, sponte, Instinct. The inquiry leads us to the source, and once the essence of virtue, genius, and life, which we call spontaneity or instinct, which we denote by this primary wisdom as intuition. So there's the three words, mystery words, but powerful and accessible to every human being. Spontaneity, instinct, and intuition. But you don't get that by analyzing. It's the antithesis of analyzing. Say that fast 3 times. We denote this primary wisdom as intuition, which all later teachings are tuitions. In that deep force, I love this. In that deep force, the last fact behind which analysis cannot go, all things find their common origin. And that's the creative consciousness. Inside all of us is every human being that ever lived, been murdered, we've been a murderer, we've been a rapist, we've been raped. We don't have to relate to anything in our personal life, thank God, because I played a lot of rapists and murderers, so I don't want to have any personal connection with that, because I think if you did your research and actually killed somebody to find out what it would be like for your acting assignment, I think you could only do that for a short time before you probably would get caught. I'm just saying. Don't you think, perhaps? Yeah. So, here we are on the now again. Let's go to work and be of good cheer. All right, let's have at this.